Hello, and welcome to Earplay's First Mondays series. My name is Richard Festinger, and I'll be your host for this program. On May 15th, 2017, Earplay performed Toru Takemitsu's beguiling trio Between Tides at ODC Theater in San Francisco's Mission District. In a few minutes, we'll watch the performance video of this alluring piece, but first a few words about Mr. Takemitsu and the music you're about to hear. Among the most acclaimed composers of the post-World War II international avant-garde, Toru Takemitsu was born in Tokyo in 1930. At odds with his own native culture owing to the ruinous war years, he became fascinated with European and American music, which he heard through radio programs of the occupying American forces. Largely self-taught, Takemitsu quickly developed into a prolific composer, amassing a catalog of nearly 200 concert works and some 90 film scores. One European composer who continued to influence Takemitsu throughout his creative life was Claude Debussy. Debussy himself was much influenced by Asian music that he first encountered on hearing an Indonesian gamelan perform at the 1889 International Exposition in Paris. And thus, many have remarked that Takemitsu was, in a sense, reabsorbing through Debussy's influence aspects of Asian culture filtered through a European sensibility. Debussy is well known for his interest in a kind of musical depiction of natural scenes, which earned him the designation of impressionist. Several of his pieces highlight water as a central image. Pieces like Ondine, Reflections on the Water, and perhaps most notably his orchestral tone poem, La Mer, the Sea. Like Debussy, Takemitsu composed a number of works linked to water. Works with titles like Toward the Sea, I Hear the Water Dreaming, River Run, and of course, Between Tides, a late work dating from 1993, just 3 years prior to Takemitsu's death. Like certain of Debussy's water pieces, Between Tides is, in its own way, very much a depictive work of musical impressionism. Let's explore what that means, and in the process explore some ways of approaching listening to the piece. One important element in Between Tides is a particular chord that permeates the entire piece, occurring 160 times in the work's 103 measures, and variously transposed through all the intervals. Another ubiquitous element is the so-called sea, S-E-A, motif, whose shape is a continuously rising figure, suggesting perhaps the kind of motion one observes in small waves lapping up against a pier or the side of a boat, waves that swell up, encounter a solid object, and then are gone. Let's listen to an example that includes these two elements. Here, at the very beginning of the piece, you'll hear two parallel phrases. Each phrase begins with the piano playing a melody against several transpositions of the signature chord, and ends with the violin and cello. In the first phrase, the cello plays the C motif. In the second phrase, the violin plays it. The two phrases conclude with the three instruments playing a variant of the C motif in unison. Pay particular attention to the very first sounds you hear in the piece, where we hear a repeated note followed by a chord. This idea recurs at key points in the piece in expanded form. It's an initiating idea, introducing each new section of the piece. Next is another example of the initiating idea I mentioned, expanding the motif of a repeated note surrounded by chords. You can think of this as a kind of marker, a return to a familiar idea that will begin a new excursion. There is another important motif heard often, and usually twice in succession, whose shape suggests the placid, undulating motion of gentle waves. It is closely associated with a second undulating idea, immediately following in the example. In contrast to the generally serene, slow-moving quality of the music, there is one passage, repeated later in the piece, whose character is turbulent, and the only music that might be described as climactic. It concludes a longer, repeated passage, and when heard the second time, it signals that the end of the piece is at hand. These basic elements of between tides are pervasive, like, say, the repeated motions one observes gazing down at an expanse of water, whose very fixity is comprised of constant motion, always changing, yet always the same. And therein lies the impressionistic, depictive quality of between tides. Formal design in this music is very different from the forms typical of Western European music. There we normally find highly directional, goal-oriented music projecting a tightly structured musical architecture designed for narrative logic and dramatic impact. Takemitsu's music, by contrast, is more like an undirected walk through a garden, the visitor stopping here and there for a closer look, his steps often retracing or crossing over where he has already been. Or, to use another metaphor, this music is like the constantly changing, undulating surface of an expanse of water, viewed during the calm moments between the turbulent rushing of tides. Thank you for listening. I hope you've enjoyed this program. Please consider donating to Earplay to help us continue to bring you quality programs. And please join us for a new Earplay production each Monday on our YouTube channel. For more news about past and future Earplay programs, please visit us at earplay.org.